I, I've been, Headmaster, I've been arm twisting Pavan since the days I was asked to raise funds for the Kashmir house roof, etc. I said, let me pool in my friends. He was the first person I met. He successfully avoided me for 3 months after that. So I think we've got just we've got another minute. I'd like to start on time. Can we, Vipul, is it possible to give Pavan the control?
I can, yeah, I already have control.
So let's play your video, Pavan, and when it finishes, we can start it, if that's all right.
Let me just ensure that the audio gets shared. Yeah.
Yeah, we could hear the audio when you played.
Okay, so let's get started and then.
बढ़ते ही चले बढ़ते चले बढ़ते चले बढ़ते चले बढ़ते ही चले बढ़ते चले इन राहों में बढ़ते चले बढ़ते ही चले बढ़ते चले इन राहों में बढ़ते चले दिन भर और रात को देश चलाया है दिन भर और रात को देश चलाया है कड़ी धूप या बारिश पहुंचाया है बेफिक्री से जब हम बैठ जाते हैं बेफिक्री से जब हम बैठ जाते हैं अपने लिए दो पल मिल जाते हैं बढ़ते ही चले इन राहों में बढ़ते चले
नहीं है अब कुछ थोड़ा थम जाओ पर थकना नहीं है अब बढ़ते ही रहना है अपनी ही राहों पे कुछ थोड़ा पेशेंस कुछ सद्भाव से यादों में मेरे प्यारे बसते हैं उनसे हम बैठे हुए बातें करते हैं ट्रैफिक की चिंता नहीं पार्किंग की चिंता नहीं साथ हो जब तो साथ अपना अपने ही शहर को आंखों से देखा मैंने फूल वो दुकानें कुछ नए से दिखे मुझे पहले नहीं दिखते थे नजर पड़ जाती अब सुकून है चैन है होश बढ़ जाता अब
बढ़ते ही चले बढ़ते चले बढ़ते चले बढ़ते चले बढ़ते चले बढ़ते चले
रुकना
राहों में बढ़ते
चले अब रुकना नहीं चलना ही है
बढ़ते चले
रुकना नहीं
राहों में बढ़ते
चले अब रुकना नहीं चलना ही है
बढ़ते चले
रुकना नहीं
राहों में बढ़ते
चले अब रुकना नहीं चलना ही है
बढ़ते चले
रुकना नहीं
राहों में बढ़ते
चले अब रुकना नहीं
Thank you, Pavan. Well, good evening, gentlemen. My name is Tarun Soni. I'm the president of the Doon School Old Boys Society. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you to the second edition of DOSCOTalks. We have tried to have this series where we where we have some concepts of learning, lifelong learning, etc., that would be interesting to the DOSCO fraternity and to the boys at school. And so in that spirit, the talk today is about the path to success. I'd like to welcome Pavan Vaish. Pavan is a dear friend, and he is a DOSCO through and through. He has been involved at the school at various levels. He's taught at school. He's been part of the IPSS. He's assisted the Old Boys Society. And of course, he's a stalwart DOSCO. Pavan also heads driver and supply operations for India and South Asia for Uber. He's had a tremendous career in academics, and he will be talking about that and about technology and entrepreneurship in today's event. Welcome, Pavan. Thank you for joining us today, and thank you for taking the time. I'd also like to welcome Abhinandan Sekhri, who's also a very dear friend and a member of the executive committee of the Old Boys Society. Abhinandan, besides being a writer and director and producer, is a tremendous entrepreneur in his own right. And he has founded a news platform called News Laundry, which if you have not heard about, I would encourage you to Google and see all the incredible things that Abhinandan is doing. Abhinandan will be moderating the session with Pavan today. Abhinandan, thank you very much for taking the time as well. I'd also like to welcome the headmaster, Dr. Jagpreet Singh. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us today. It's always a pleasure to have you here. You're a tremendous support to the DSOBS. And I know that you would like to say a few words. I'd just like to make just a few points for today's talk. Please do pepper us with your questions, or pepper Abhinandan, who will be doing the moderation, with your questions throughout, so that he can interspace that during the conversation that he has with Pavan. So don't wait until the end. Please continue to write in, and Abhinandan will be taking up those questions as the talk commences. So thank you very much again for joining us today. I'd like to invite the headmaster just to say a few words, and then I will hand it over to Abhinandan to start this talk.
Thank you, Tarun. Thank you, DSOBS and Tarun and his team to have me on this DOSCO Learning. It's a great platform, and I'm so happy to see Pavan here today, who stands as a true role model, in the sense the young DOSCOs who are watching him today and would be hearing his story of success. And who could be better a moderator than Abhinandan Sekhri, who doesn't know him? So both the two stalwarts, of course, coming on a platform, and he moderating and Pavan telling the story of success. I'm equally excited, but Pavan, my only request would be, the young DOSCOs who are hearing you today in your talk, I would truly appreciate, how did your schooling, how did Chandbagh, how did the Doon School education really help you in the path of success? If you can just touch that point, I think the young DOSCOs will get very ignited with that thought. But wishing you all the best for your talk. Thank you, Tarun, for having me here, and all the best to you, Abhinandan. I'm sure we're looking forward for this session. Thank you for having me here once again.
So over to you, Pavan and Abhinandan.
Thank you, Tarun. Thank you, sir. It is an honor and a pleasure to be a part of this. And thank you for making the time and for your kind words. And thank you, Tarun, for kind of pumping me up there more than I deserved. How we're going to format this, Pavan will be making a presentation. And in the box that you are on, there is a Q&A button, which is the last button. It's the fifth button at the bottom on the right. So do put your questions there. I will keep taking them, so you don't have to wait for the end for the questions. So whenever you have a question, when you think of a question, put it out there, and I will try to pack in all those questions by the time our 1 hour is over. So that's the format, and I will hand over to Pavan, who will make his presentation because he has prepared something specifically for all you DOSCOs. And I would just like to say one thing from my time at Doon, and even after I came to college and I meet many people, the thing that is often asked is that, why is Doon special? What was it that you guys had that the rest of us didn't? And I'm sure there are many things, but the one thing that really stands out for me is that in school, we got the advice of really smart, hardworking, entrepreneurial, and amazing people. And more importantly, we were encouraged to ask them questions dhadalle se. I mean, I remember MF Hussain painting, and it was the MF Hussain, and they said, any questions? So one boy got up and said, why are you barefoot? I mean, you were not discouraged from asking any question, you know. I remember Arun Shourie being challenged. I remember the gentleman who headed IPKF being challenged, and he had to, you know, answer the question. So that is the biggest asset that Doon gives you. And someone of Pavan's stature here, don't hold back. Ask the questions you have. So Pavan, I'll hand over to you. Please make your presentation. I'll keep interrupting with questions.
Oh, thanks, Niku, and absolutely delighted to be here. This is going to be an interesting one because I will blend in a lot about my upbringing, the Doon schooling, and the kind of impact it had, which actually has been, you know, very profound and continues till this date. And we'll take it on from there. So, so first, I will talk of my personal journey and, you know, my growing up years. And I started out, I'm a, you know, Delhi boy. That's where I was, you know, born and brought up. And I went to modern school, which was my dad's school. And we were from a middle-class family. My dad started his business from the tika money he got at his marriage. So, you know, working hard, you know, hard work was extremely respected. He was extremely entrepreneurial, still my role model when it comes to, you know, entrepreneurship. And I was a very naughty child. You know, I would get into all kinds of trouble and extremely poor in academics. So in modern, it was roughly a class of 50. If I came 8th in class, that's 8th from the bottom, right? You know, sweets would be given out that, you know, at least, you know, he was not rock bottom. So this is a story of hope, right? I mean, if this guy can make it, then of course, you know, all of you are a lot smarter. So from there, my mom's side of the family had gone to Doon, you know, her brothers and things. So she felt that this would have a very positive impact. So she put a lot of effort in teaching me, broke a lot of Camlin rulers on me so that I work hard. And what happened was I did land up making it through the Doon entrance exam. And Doon truly turned my life. I will say it was initially hard because, you know, going to a faraway place, you don't have email access and all, which you have today. So your parents drop you off and then that's pretty much it. They show up once in Founders. But I think my own maturing, my ability to go through hardship, take on responsibility and deal with my own demons, bring, you know, build lifetime friendships, right? That all happened here. And I clearly remember during the Golden Jubilee, there was a video film which was made, which talked of a crucible of character. And that is truly something I think that Doon did to me, right? I think it really matured and developed one's character. And, you know, whether it's courtesy, behavior, a classless society, you should be able to talk to the dhabewala and, you know, a king and be equally at ease and also appreciate what each one uniquely brings. And I think this is all something that Doon brought around. When I was in Doon, I was doing very poorly till, you know, about B Form. And then something very interesting happened. You know, my chemistry teacher said, you stole a book. And I hadn't stolen a book. So obviously you're stuck over there. And so how do I prove him wrong? So I actually went, I started working hard, and I actually started doing well. And as I started doing well, it's an upward spiral, right? And you start to prove yourself. And once you start doing well, obviously, you know, you don't want to go back. So it's very interesting how adversity can land up in some ways egging you forward. And, you know, mine's a story about going in as the underdog, working hard, and then, you know, coming on. So from Doon, I worked very hard, applied for IIT, and that's where I got in. I got into IIT Kharagpur. And I still remember showing up in IIT, and the first reaction, you know, over there was like, where is this specimen showed up from? Because Doon, a boarding school, you know, extremely fancy place. So I got special treatment and ragging. And the beauty is I made such strong friendships over there, you know, extremely bright people. And this last statement, which is here, character is like gold, the harder you rub, the more it shines, is what Sheil Vora, or more affectionately known as Bond, wrote in my autograph book. And that is truly something I still carry to date. You know, that the more you kind of go through the rough times, you come out stronger. So IIT was a great leveler, brought in a lot of confidence. Again, we are far away from any big town in Kharagpur. So from there, I worked hard. I still didn't know what I wanted to do in life. I fortunately got a scholarship to the US. So I went to Stanford and there was a teaching assistantship over there. And in IIT, I was learning because of the danda, right? You had to do it. Whereas in Stanford, I learned because of the joy of learning. If you did not want to go to class, no one forced you to, but you went there because you absolutely loved it, right? There were people who would work extremely hard and then they would also go to the beach and be surfing. You're right in the middle of Silicon Valley, in the middle of entrepreneurship. Your professors are also doing startup companies. So you were able to balance, work and sports. You were able to balance theory and application. This is truly a very, very memorable experience. And I think that's where kind of I got unlocked. But candidly, I still don't know what I wanted to do. I decided to come back to India. And because I was teaching at Stanford, I thought that an easy way for me to get back into India would be into teaching. So I wrote to the headmaster of, Doon and said, I'm open to coming back and I'd love to teach. And it just so happened that Mr. Dikshit, who was the head of the physics department, was retiring. And they said, yeah, you can come and you can take his entire load all the way from D form to SE form. Now, that was pretty amazing. And so that's what I did. I came and I started teaching at Chandbagh. And I'll be honest, outside of my Daksh years, those have been my most enjoyable years, right? And I just yearn to, go back to campus, maybe do something, be engaged, teach, whatever, run an institution. That's something I always think about. I'm very, very fond of it. And it instilled in me a deep sense of purpose that what I'm here really for is to unlock the capabilities of others and make them succeed, right? And I think it took some time. It's later on in my career that I figured that out, but it stems from the Doon experiences and then of course the experience at Stanford. Later in my career, a couple of years later, once I was working with IBM, I went to Harvard Business School. I did the AMP program there, which allowed for a transition from me playing the CEO role, Chief Operating Officer role, to the CEO role. But we'll talk about that later. So that was a little bit of the personal journey. And I will say that the value systems, the culture, the friendships, the authenticity that Doon taught till this day are absolutely critical to who I am and to my success, right? So very, very important. And I do think that a Doon education truly sets people apart in things that you don't normally catch in the initial interview, but matter a lot.
Pavan, before you move on to your professional journey, there are 3 questions related to your time at school and Stanford. These 2 that had come in earlier, these are from Amritansh at Berkeley. I guess he is also contemplating what he does after that. He says, why did you come back to India after your time at Stanford? Couldn't you have done equally well in Silicon Valley?
So the honest answer to this, and it's not the one you would normally expect, is my mother had brainwashed me that, don't be like one of those guys who goes to IIT, the government spends a lot of money and then they get, brain drained into the US and stay there, right? Please come back and do something for your country. So I was just very fearful of her wrath. And I never told her that. So I said, once your education finishes, just come back lest you get hammered. So, that was the honest reason. I could have stayed back and probably would have done well. I don't know where that path would have gone. But I am glad that I did come back and charted a journey where I had one foot in India, and through my work, most of my customers were in the US, so I was able to balance it.
And the second question from Manu Mehrotra is, what are some of the examples of what Doon did that worked for you and built character?
So, for example, social service. When we are at Doon, whether it is house squad and you're raking in the leaves or doing something stupid like that, I never thought it would have any influence on me. But later on, when I started Daksh, we actually brought in giving to society as a core part of our value system.
And we said that once a business unit, and I had multiple business units under me, is profitable, they have to give back to community, both in terms of time and in terms of money. So that all goes back to that Doon education and very strong instilling of, you are very fortunate to have this education, or in this case, to have a job. But there are enough smart people who did not have electricity, for example, so they could not be in Doon or in IIT. So please do for them. So that's a very good example. Second thing is being authentic and having a middle class value system where your team or your family matters a lot. And that is how I have built organization culture in the companies that I have been a part of.
Right. And last question related to your education. When did you start preparing for IIT? And what was something you credit for getting scholarship in the States?
So IIT, I actually started preparing after my A form, S and SE form. And I would give a lot of the credit to Mr. Bhuvan Vaishnav, BVS. He was the one who helped me in maths. Every time he would come out of his house, he'd look left and right, that I hope Pavan is not there, because if he intercepts me, then gone 1 hour, because he'll keep asking questions. As far as the scholarship is concerned, frankly, when you're in IIT, there are colleges who want you, right? I mean, so the first thing is getting into IIT, and that provides a great platform. So that's where it went.
Thanks, Pavan. Yeah, you can move on with your professional journey, and the rest of the questions will come then.
So a professional journey, as I said, I came back to Doon. So I was teaching physics over there. I loved it. I would have probably continued had I not chickened out and wondered what will happen if I don't like it in a couple of years. Maybe I would have been doing Mr. Jagpreet Singh's job and running school, which is certainly a phenomenal aspiration. I would love to do that. But my dad called, and we had a family business called Quadrant. And so I joined him. I'm the only son. This was into offshore data capture. And I would really give him a lot of credit, because in spite of the fact that, we had a family business, he allowed me to discover myself. And a couple of years later, I actually started with some friends, a company called Daksh. This is the height of the .com boom, late 1999, early 2000. And we said, we have all these kids coming out of, St. Stephen's College and all these fancy colleges who don't have any jobs. So, and yet you have these companies on the internet which need to provide customer service, and they're growing very fast. They're unable to do so. So that was the intent. And we started this company. We got lucky. Amazon was our first customer, and we grew it fairly rapidly. First year, we were 200 people. By the fourth year, we were 6,000 people, which is when IBM acquired us. And from Daksh, we became IBM Daksh. I stayed on in the business for the next 7 years. I became the CEO of the business, and we grew the business to about 40,000 people. And it turned out to be IBM's most successful services acquisition in their history. Just also, I think it unleashed a lot of opportunity for a lot of our employees, because they took on senior jobs within the broader IBM community. Now, after 11 years, having spent in Daksh or IBM Daksh, I wanted to do something different. And so I joined a legal outsourcing company called United Lex. And in much the same way that Daksh had assumed preeminence in the BPO space and was really respected, I thought that here is an opportunity to help a company, which is United Lex, become preeminent in the legal services space. And so that was a 6-year journey. And it was intense, because I used to spend 2 weeks every month in the US. I did that for 6 years because I was the global chief operating officer. And once that was all done, I wanted to switch and go into a completely different segment where I had no experience. And I thought that you have a lot of these internet-based technology businesses, and there is a lot of capability that I bring in terms of scaling companies, scaling organization culture, developing people. And yet I don't know much about technology run businesses. And it just so happened that Uber was going through this phase where they were looking to, bring in talent which had exactly my kind of experience as it began to mature, as the years went along. And so that's where I landed up, and I have been there for 2 years. And it's just been an incredible journey of both being able to give back and make people grow, and think back to the teaching mindset that one had. So exactly what one is able to do in a corporate setting, and also learn, because I learn from every one of my team members, because in many ways they know so much more than me in the specific nuances of a technology business. So it's been a very, very enjoyable ride, and you're making impact at Uber scale, right? I mean, which is just very, very large. So from here, I'll go and talk a little bit about what have been my learnings through the course of this career that I've had. So on the business learning side, when it comes to operational execution, few thoughts for the folks here. First is having strategic clarity of just what in heavens are you working towards is very, very important. If you cannot, stand the elevator test, which means that, on a 10-second, 15-second elevator ride, if someone asks you, like, what do you do in Uber, right? If you're not able to tell them crisply, these are the 4-5 things that you're focused on, that means that you are not clear, and therefore the organization will not be clear as to what exactly is their deeper sense of purpose, right? The same would apply, for example, to the Doon School, right? Second is values and culture truly matter. And to DOSCOs, this is something which comes naturally, because you know that DOSCO spirit, all the things which matter in school, showing up on time for classes, etc., all this matters. Sportsmanship on the field. This is the values and culture, right? The soft stuff that really drives hard results. Then you got to execute, right? Execution excellence. You roll up your sleeves and get shit done, right? If you're not able to execute, everything else is theory. And we give a lot of empowerment, but there has to be accountability. You go for midterms, but if you're caught jamming, then you pay the price, right? You learn this in the Doon School. And you have to build your company customer backwards, right? So that client focus, you have to obsess about this. We did that at Daksh, we do it at Uber. All great companies do this extremely well. And finally, you have to take risk. And there is failure when you take risk. I mean, that's the nature of the beast. And I'll share 1 or 2 examples. In terms of leadership, I would just say, think big and work with empathy, have an heart. So these are some learnings on the business side. The second one is you must have complete clarity as to what your big rocks are, right? And this is what I call my bubble chart. And I actually took a photo of something I did at IBM with my HR leader. So for each one of my team members, I tell them, put yourself at the center, and what are 5-6 strategic things you need to do in order to be successful, right? And this holds true for everyone. And you could put personal things you have to do. These could be professional things. And then the analogous example is a housewife knows that she has a small fridge. What are the 5 things she has to put in the fridge, and everything else, if it fits, that's okay. So in your life, you can't do everything. So having this clear priority list is very, very important. And I would encourage, everyone who's in business and beyond to be thinking like this. The next thing is balance. And this is what I learned from Doon. When we started Daksh, we said there are 4 constituents to whom we are accountable. First is customer satisfaction. So our customers must be delighted with what we do. Second is employee satisfaction. So because we are in a services business, our employees must be happy, not spoiled, but happy, right? Then there is investor satisfaction. People who put money in the company must get a fair return. And finally, the 4th one that I talked of around SUPW is community satisfaction, that you must give back to community, but only once you're profitable. If you're not healthy, don't worry about doing for others. First, get yourself in shape, right? So a lot of this kind of goes back to the Doon years and the learning from there. So I'm going to pause here, Niku, if there are any questions. Otherwise, I'll move on to the Uber side of the journey. I think you're on mute.
Sorry. Yeah, we do have a bunch of questions. So let me put the ones that are relevant to this part of it. So this is from Samik Das. While IBM Daksh was doing well, what made you switch? And you again switched industries. Do you embrace risk, or do you take risk as a matter of habit? Why would you make those changes? And there's a similar question that, why do you shift from one industry to the other when you're doing well in one? So we just take both together.
So my switches have been when I stopped feeling that I want to go to work, right? I stopped finding it enjoyable. I stopped finding that there was learning and that I was adding value, right? So I'd been in IBM for a long time. I realized IBM has been very, very generous to me. It's a great company. But I think after 11 years, what I was looking for was something different. So I had to change the canvas of the painting. So I took a break. It was roughly, I think, 9 months while I figured out what is it I truly want to do. And that's when I landed up with United Lex. And similarly, after United Lex, I took a year's break and landed up with Uber. So I think at least for me, it comes when I realize that I'm not getting personally challenged and I'm not enjoying it. So that's the trigger.
And part of that question is, will you continue to explore new fields? So I guess that's asking where next, but you've just about joined Uber. So I guess that's not relevant right now.
I think the day I feel I have given everything I can and, I've given to the organization and I'm not able to add value, I think that is the time it'll trigger in me that, listen, I need to find my next avenue, because I'm always pursuing opportunities where I can make scale impact and, groom people and talent to unlock capability. And that personally gives me a lot of satisfaction. Just like a headmaster or teacher gets a lot of satisfaction by their students doing well, that's at least my personal calling.
Right. Some of the questions that have come may get answered in the presentation. So why don't you continue and we'll take those later.
So I'll now move to the Uber side of things. And a question that I get very often is, what is it that you look for when you hire talent in Uber, right? So there are a number of things. First is we are looking at people who have the hunger to create impact at scale, right? We do not want to do something small because that's not what Uber's mandate is. We truly want to transform transportation, right? We truly want to transform delivery, right? At a global scale, right? So people who aspire and think big, those are the people. People who think they can change the world, those are the people we are looking for. We're looking for deep domain expertise, right? So if you come with expertise in a certain area and we need that, that is what we're looking for. And also people who we think have the potential to become the future leaders of tomorrow for Uber. So we are kind of taking those saplings that we know we can mentor, groom, which is, for example, my job, to make them into the oak trees of tomorrow, right? We also want people who can get shit done. So we call them, hustlers, right? Or hardcore operators. And yet people with heart, people with empathy, because we are making an impact on millions of drivers. We are making their livelihoods. We are impacting their families. If you do not relate to them, if it doesn't make you stand up and say, I got to do my damnedest, right, to put another 1,000 rupees in their pocket every month, then Uber is not the right place for you. And then finally, the ones who have an appetite to take big risks or bold bets, and sometimes you'll fail. So I'm going to, play one example of where we took a bold bet. This one didn't pan out, but it's an interesting one.
I'll be going, guys.
So this is an example of Uber Boat. We actually launched it in Mumbai. So you could go to Gateway of India on your app. You could actually book an Uber Boat, like an entire speedboat. and then go, wherever, to a couple of places. And the government was very supportive. The local administration was very helpful. But what we realized is that all the boats which operate in that region are without insurance. So if you land up, getting knocked into the sea, it's tata bye-bye, and that's obviously not a good place to be. And what we landed up doing was, obviously as Uber, we cannot do that. And we worked very hard with the insurance companies to try and come up with a cost-effective product, but we were unable to do that. Now, you could say that this was a failure, but in the Uber thing, we tried to think big because we think that waterways are going to be a very, very important transport avenue for the future. And who knows, as these get unlocked in the future, we will, leverage this experience and start an Uber boat service like we have done in a few other places around the globe. So we are looking for people who will take, big risk and, kind of go from there. The other value which is important is we need people who will, be hardcore hustlers, operators, and get stuff done. And we had a very big crisis that came up in March, which all of us are familiar with, which is COVID-19. And I wanted to share some of the experiences about in this unprecedented crisis where the Uber business completely shut down in India, Sri Lanka, and Bangladesh, the three regions that I'm responsible for. How did we react? So we went into lockdown 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, 4.0, right? And after the initial shock, our first reaction was we have all these driver partners who are there and their earning is gone to zero because they cannot drive. And yet we were hearing stories about doctors and nurses who could not get transportation from their homes to the hospital. And they were walking 5-10 kilometers each way, right, to reach the hospital and serve patients. So the first thing we did was we launched a specific service called Uber Medic, which had physical, partitions between the driver and the rider area. And they were there. These are free rides which are given. We tied up with hospitals and they were transporting doctors and nurses from their homes to the hospital and back. And our driver partners were actually making a living because they were able to drive. And Uber was, paying for that. Then what we also found is local administrations coming and saying, we have people who need to go through chemotherapy, through dialysis, or they need to go to the pharmacy. So can you provide us a solution where we will issue them police passes and these people can go, from their home to any of these places that we allow. So maybe these 5 hospitals in Dehradun and these 20 pharmacies in Dehradun as an example, using a Dune example. So we use our technology, we geofence these locations and started a service which was called Uber Essentials. So Aam Janta could actually go to these places during the lockdown. Now, as we started doing this, we found that people were not getting groceries at home because companies, which were doing grocery delivery, their supply lines were stretched. So we teamed up with folks like Big Basket and used our supply network to deliver last mile grocery. And then finally, people were saying, oh, listen, I'm here. My parents are, 5 miles away in the same city. I want to send them some home cooked food. So we started a service called Uber Connect, where you could give them a package up to 5 kilos and the driver would deliver it from one place to another. All these, not thinking about what it is for Uber, but we have to deliver to the country the needs at that time. Then what we also did was we completely revamped our technology, whether it was on the driver side or the rider side. You could now take a selfie and verify that the driver was wearing a mask, things like that, as the services got unlocked. Apart from leveraging our deep technology expertise, what we also did was we started giving out PPE. So we started giving out masks, disinfectants, and till this day, we give it out free of cost, right? This is world-class, CDC approved stuff, which our drivers can use to disinfect their vehicles and make them safer, because they did not have any money to buy all this. So finally, in summary, what I would leave as some thoughts for you is, as I look at my career, I think just being patient, and especially for folks who are either in school or early part of their career, be patient. There's a tendency for instant gratification, which I think is a recipe for disaster. First few jobs, treat them as a part of your education. Don't worry about salary, right? I think something you learn at Doon is don't compromise your integrity. I think that's super, super important. And one thing that I learned is, after a little while, the value of every incremental dollar that you earn is close to zero, right? So focus on, the experiences, the friendships, what you learn and what you can contribute. And lastly, what I would say is building resiliency and adaptability, especially during these COVID times, is very, very important, right? It's tough. It's very hard. A lot of people are working from home. A lot of students are actually doing work remotely. I know it's tough, but if you're adaptable and you build resiliency, it'll serve you very well throughout your life. Going to the journey ahead, how I look at it, I would say I'm a strong proponent of something called Ikigai, which is if you bring something that you love doing and you're good at, and you combine it with something the world needs and you can be paid for, I think that is the ideal melting place. And for me, that was being a teacher and a student all collectively and using it to unlock capability, whether it is in companies, whether it's in a school, that is a minor detail, right? So this is something which has worked well. And in closing, I would just say, when you're dead and gone, what would you like to be remembered for, right? What is your mission statement? I think this is a very deep question. And if you can write down that this is what you'd like to be remembered for, whether you were, a great parent, whether you were a great teacher, or you were always there for your children, and then are you living that life today? I think if you can bring it all together, that can be very, very powerful. So Niku, over to you.
Thank you, Pavan. In case the DOSCO wondering why Pavan calls me Niku, we go back before we knew each other as DOSCOs. And when I was setting up News Laundry, Pavan was the first person I went to advice for, by the way, just letting you know, because I thought he would be a very good person to tell me what to expect as I take that step into that direction. Now, Pavan, there are many questions and I will try to come to each of them. So, you just try to keep the, answers as short so we can pack in as many, but that won't leave much time for my questions. So I will put one question that I really had, and that's the only question of mine that I put. I'll take all the rest from the others. This is Chatham House rules. I'm guessing this is a closed group and not everything is going to go out, but I think it's a chance to be brutally honest. And I've had this conversation with many DOSCO friends, and we were discussing that in the age bracket from like 60, 65 to 80, you have leaders of, every, industry, arts, literature, right from Amitabh Ghosh to Vikram Seth, to people in the media, to people in industry who did really well. But south of that, below 60, there are very few cases. I mean, the frequency of DOSCOs that any industry you pick, the leaders will be DOSCOs is not true. Is it because we depend too much on the privilege of access? And at a time when where your success was determined by who you knew, DOSCOs did a lot better. And now whether it's the Vijay Shekhars, it's the new startups, you don't see so many DOSCOs up there. Why do you think that is? I mean, is there a problem that we need to address in what DOSCOs expect? I mean, they aren't hustlers. They can't, do the rough and tumble of entrepreneurial life. What do you think it is?
So I think that the raw material is all there in a Doon education, but you have to have the hunger to want to make a difference, to make a mark, and to do it with that explicit purpose, right? It is not to make money. If you are focused on making money, you will probably land up in the wrong place, right? And I still think that there's a lot of Doon folks who will make an impact. But if you go back and look at all these people, they pursued their passion. They pursued what they were really good at. If you look at that Ikigai, right? I mean, they're doing what they love doing, and they're also, being able to earn through it. So I think a very deep question here is, what is your Ikigai? What is it that you truly love doing, you're good at, you can get paid for? Or are you counting your parents' chickens, as I said, just because you're well-to-do, or you're privileged to be, in a well-to-do family? So that's...
Okay, so let me start taking the questions. This one again comes from the young man at Berkeley. He says, how did the Valley help shape your career? And what advice would you have for other DOSCOs who want to pursue a career in the Valley?
So actually, my career was not really shaped in the Valley. It was all shaped here in India, leveraging companies in the Valley, right? So I was selling into them. But all my businesses have been here, barring
Your
probably
stint at Stanford give you some access, some additional benefit that you wouldn't have got here. Did that?
You know, Silicon Valley at that time and today are two very different places. But you know, I think it certainly instilled that entrepreneurial spirit in me, that you can land up doing anything, right? I think that was very important. My advice would be that if you're in the Valley, get some experience with some really good companies, and also try and get some experience in slightly smaller companies where you will get added responsibility. Even if it is a startup and it goes, you know, belly up, the learning is just incredible. And that will serve you extremely well in your life. Because if you see some of that failure up front, there's a lot more you will learn from that than from the, you know, successes which are there. So the Valley is a very rich place to get experiences. You must absolutely go and do that.
This question comes from a vice president, Samir. He says, how did your teaching stint shape you? Did you get any students like Samir who said, "Chodo yaar, yahan se jaake daksh banata hai"?
I have had it has been profound. As I said, some of my best years, you know, were at Doon teaching. I absolutely loved it. I think the impact I was able to make on students was significant. And the reason I say that is, you know, even after marriage, you know, I would be in the mall somewhere and someone would come and, you know, 6-footer would say, "Hey, sir, you taught me in Doon." And my wife would be absolutely perplexed who this guy is. So obviously that worked very well. And I think what I loved was that I was able to shape people, not just in the classroom, but outside the classroom. And someone who was a very bright student turned out to be a very selfish guy when I took them on midterms, and, you know, he just left everyone behind. So I was able to coach and counsel them that, listen, this is not good behavior. And I think it's a 360 development, which is truly so special, right?
Vivek Gupta asks, what are the CSR plans of Uber in India?
So we do a lot of work. I mean, we, for example, have worked with Robin Hood Army, right? And provided a very large number of meals. We, for example, have worked with HelpAge India to help transport old folks. We worked in the Bihar elections to provide our services for elderly people to go to the poll booths. So we keep doing a lot of work in a number of areas, all focused on how we can marry our service and do good for society.
Right. Then Srijan is, I guess you could give him some very important practical experience. He is a Tata House batch of 2020, freshman at IIT right now as we speak. And he has been building his own startup. So how do you really assemble a team? And what, according to you, are some of the core values that you must have in an ideal team?
So this is probably, Srijan, a conversation which is for a slightly more extended conversation. I'd love to catch up one-on-one. My email address is pavanvaish@yahoo.com, Pavan. So feel free to connect with me. But I think getting that core team of like-minded people, right, who you can, you know, the chemistry really gets along. I think that is super important, and that's the most difficult thing. So rest everything, whatever, you know, grand plans you have, rest assured they will change through the journey of your startup. But if you have the right team and you are, you know, well knit, I think that will help. But we can talk more. So feel free to get in touch with me.
Then this says, apart from the incident at the chemistry department, what were the people, who were the people on campus who really egged you on, who you'd really look up to in times of need?
So I would say, I already mentioned, you know, BVS or Bhuvan Vaishnav. I think he was an inspiration for me. I also would give a lot of credit to both my housemaster and my dame. So Mr. Hempant. I actually fell very sick in my SC form and actually came late to school for the final exams. And just, his caring attitude. He gave his study to me and Ashu, who's actually on this call. He's the DSOBS secretary, so that we could study and prepare for IIT. I think it was very genuine. So I do owe a lot to Mr. Pant and of course BVS.
And was the environment on campus conducive to keep you charged and inspired and focus on studies? And what would you recommend to the school today to ensure students can focus on their studies without being disturbed?
I think we give too much emphasis that school will provide you something. I think school already provides you all the avenues. The question is, do you want to do it? And if you want to do it, you'll be able to create that atmosphere, and people will actually give you that space. I don't think that's the case. So rather than being in victim mode as to, the school needs to do this or that, I think the school already has everything. It's an amazing institution. If you are really, convinced that you want to work, for example, for IIT or some, US college, you have to make that ecosystem around you.
Right. These two questions I'll just bung as one because I guess your answer may be connected. One is that, you shared the example of a plan that did not work out. What suggestions do you have for dealing with failure? And second, Uday Pratap Singh asked, what are the lockdown lessons that you learned in this unprecedented year?
So, as far as failure is concerned, one is, once you go through failure, I think it is important to step back and put down what is it that you really learned from it. Because if you did not get some experiences and learnings from it, then you will repeat the same mistake, and that actually is stupidity, right? So as much as you can be innovative, entrepreneurial, and there'll be failure, if you keep repeating it, that obviously is not the right thing. So lessons learned, I think, is an important one. And what was the second question? What did you learn in the lockdown?
Yeah.
So I think apart from everything in business, the organization has to develop resilience and adaptability. And what we found is that working from home is hard. People don't admit it, but their effectiveness begins to come down a little bit. So you have to recognize that and work towards engaging with people and giving them a break. People are working a lot harder sitting at home than they worked when they were in office. And we're missing that water cooler talk, things like that. So I think that has been probably one of the hardest things which is there.
Now this question, Pankaj, your question has already been answered about what he learned in school that has helped shape his success. I will not take that because I think he addressed that earlier. This says, what are your thoughts on innovation and managing change? I mean, it's a very broad-based question, so I don't know whether you can give a short answer to it, but there's a more specific question which says, which is Debashish, Pavan, how do you think hunger can be best taught to the next generation of DOSCOs?
Yeah, that I think is a very deep question, and one which I think is very important, right? And one of the things that I keep saying, and I actually gave a talk in some other schools also, and I keep saying, don't count on your parents' chickens, right? Which is that have the pride to say that I achieved something, right? And I think that if you have that sense that I have to achieve something in life, right, that hunger will emerge. And if you're doing something about which you're deeply passionate, it could be playing the tabla, it could be painting, it could be writing, it could be dance. It doesn't have to be that you have to be a science, nerd or whatever, right? But whatever is your passion, right? If you follow that and you say, I'm going to do something which is going to change the world, right? And there is that hunger in you for yourself. You're doing it for yourself, right? To prove to yourself that you're worthy. I think that truly unlocks it. And I think hunger can be taught. I have seen that, right? And good teachers actually inspire people. And in the Doom setting, headmasters, housemasters, and tutors, many times I've seen them inspire people saying, no, you can do it. Someone who's got multiple yellow cards, the housemaster takes him aside and says, hey man, you got to shape up. And look, there's so much potential in you. Why are you focused on getting yellow cards? Unleash something else. And the person has gone on to become a school captain, as an example. So I think it can be taught. I think it can be unleashed rather. Everyone has it sitting somewhere. The question is, how do you flick the switch on?
Now the two questions, which again, I guess are kind of connected. This from Dave Gogoi and Hemant Chaudhary. Dave asks, wonderful track record, strong tech bases and global connections. Can you imagine an entirely desi venture in both those terms, which I guess is on a tech basis and a global connection, indigenous and foundational application, a desi venture going videshi rather than the other way around? And the second question is, did you try and invest money being earned by MNCs from India into the community itself? That I think you addressed, but yeah, the other one.
So I think that there are increasingly companies which are India out, right? Going to conquer the world. So InMobi is one example, right? As a company, and there are many others, which will absolutely happen. I think you are now beginning to see that the internet is a great leveler, right? So those boundaries between geographies are beginning to fade, but you need to have people who truly think at global scale and think big and are dreamers. And I think it's beginning to happen, but yeah, it's still early days, but you will absolutely find that.
Right. Anthony asks, how important do you feel flexibility and the ability to change areas of specialization are in the light that many boys are registering for specific courses at university?
So I would say that the jobs of tomorrow have not even been invented today, right? So many of the folks who are in school, the jobs that they will take up in 5, 7, 10 years, we don't know what they are. So what you have to develop is a very, very strong learning capability and adaptability and flexibility, right? If you have that, you will be able to adapt, right? So that is something which is supremely important.
You know, on a related kind of subject, Mark Zuckerberg has spoken about a new social contract. I mean, we see that, you know, Piketty's book Capital, if you see, he's seen the wealth disparity, and we are at the most unequal world ever in the history of data keeping, like by a factor of, during the times of kings, it's even surpassed that. And clearly there's going to be a lot of job losses because of technology. One is hearing in accounting, in the legal space. Now this new social contract, many, you know, tech billionaires have given it various kind of an architecture that there has to be a minimum guaranteed income across the world. Otherwise it's going to be social unrest. You are in the middle of one of these, you know, new tech companies which are growing exponentially. And I'm sure you're hooked into this entire world. What do you think the world is going to look like in another, let's say, 2 decades? Because clearly this, the concentration of wealth is a huge phenomena, and the loss of jobs is too. And with pandemics becoming more frequent as they are supposed to, you know, as has been predicted, how is it going to impact people's aspirations, the jobs, and just society in general?
So I think that, so firstly, this is obviously a question which is a very tough one for, and, you know, I think it's a societal one which we have to kind of deal with. I think what is happening is that as much as tech is causing certain jobs to become redundant, right, it is also enabling other jobs to get created, right? So I'm going to take a non-Uber example. You take a tech company like Airbnb, right, which has just gone IPO. Right. So Airbnb, through its technology, has unleashed a large number of jobs where someone had a house. Now they can land up leasing it out, et cetera, and has created a lot of opportunity. So similarly, there are a lot of companies. I mean, Uber has taken its technology and unleashed it to create jobs for drivers, for couriers, as an example, and at earnings point, which is the sweet spot of at least most economies, right? I mean, that is where you want to have job creation. So I think you're going to have both, and individuals and societies which are able to reskill themselves will continue to benefit from this, right? So that's, you know, one aspect. The second is that, yes, income disparity has grown, and how do you redistribute that, I think, is a very, very important question, so that at least basic services around, whether it is healthcare, etc., you know, people are able to get some cover. But I think that's an issue that, you know, governments and society needs to solve. Probably, I'm not the best, you know, judge of what's the best answer for that, but it certainly needs to get addressed.
We have two more questions. One is, in the recent past, there's been a lot of discussion and talk on the need for mobility companies to push to becoming more environmentally friendly. What is happening within Uber with regard to this environmentally friendly direction?
So let me give you the India perspective, right? First, let's start globally. So globally, we have committed that I think it's, 2 decades out or whatever, we will be completely, pollution free and we'll be moving to electric, right? And then we have interim milestones which are there. So that is the longer term roadmap. A lot of that is dependent on how EV technology develops and is available for the masses, right? Because right now, obviously, it is expensive. As far as India is concerned, we have taken a two-step approach, and the first step is that in many cities we've actually moved the fleets to CNG, which is something that the Indian government is really promoting. And as you know, that CNG is a much more environmentally friendly fuel relative to diesel or petrol. And we are also encouraging EVs on the platform. So in the next couple of years, we're going to have many thousands of EV vehicles, and that will continue to grow. And Uber, of course, encourages EVs on its platform. But I think it'll take a little bit of time, at least in India, for the charging infrastructure to come along, etc. And that is something, as cities build out, you'll see more and more of pollution-free vehicles on the road.
And this question is, when things don't go as planned and not in the direction that you wanted, what do you tell yourself to motivate yourself at a basic human level? Agi.
I'm reminded what my, dad says, because there have been obviously moments in my career which has been quite lousy. And he says, don't worry, heavens won't fall, just move on, right? And this too shall pass, right? So I think just having that resilience and moving on, that's probably the best bet.
All right. Thank you, Pavan. Thank you, Mr. Singh. Thanks, Sameer. And I hand over to our president, Tarun. Thank you. I enjoyed it.
Before I give my thanks, I'd like to thank the vice president of the DSOBS, Sameer, for their words.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Pavan, for being there. Lovely to have you with us, Abhinandan. Fantastic, this moderation. I guess we'll request you to do a few more for us. So pleasure listening to you guys. Pavan he's a year senior to me, fantastic person, very helpful. I still remember all the time we spent when he was there in school, teaching, I meant. And it's been a pleasure. And I think you spoke and covered such aspects which are really relevant today. So thank you for that. And thank you, Headmaster, for being there. Over to you, Tarun.
Thanks, Sam. Let me just firstly thank Pavan. Pavan, thank you for taking the time. Abhinandan, thank you for the moderation. Dr. Singh, thank you very much for taking the time to join us today. Pavan, inspiring words. You spoke about resilience and adaptability, and how it has to result in an innate hunger. And these are very important words. And I think as some of the younger members of our audience today spend the next few years out at university or in their careers, they will understand more and more about what you meant about those words. I would encourage all those attending today to really look at the concept of Ikigai. It's really quite fascinating and gives rise to tremendous introspection. So please do it. Pavan has been a great advocate for it, and we can all see rather how successful he has been. Thank you for sharing the fact that you had to reinvent yourself in some ways at Uber during this COVID crisis. It's important for us to learn that there will be stumbling blocks, and you have to be innovative and you have to be open in terms of combating these challenges and hurdles that come across your way. But most important, your advice, your tremendous advice for our younger friends that have joined us today about thinking big and learning from failure is a very, very important point. So Pavan, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your thoughts with us today. This video will be available on the DSOBS YouTube channel for anybody who would like to listen to it again. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us today. And I look forward to seeing all of you at our next session of DOSCOTalks.
Thank you, Tarun. Real pleasure.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.